What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the first ever edition of Fantasy Basketball This Week, presented by District of Buckets. This is the show where we will be going over several different topics, such as biggest shiners, biggest floppers, injury reserve guys, waiver wire guys, anything you need to dominate your fantasy basketball league. So, let's get right into it. Once again, welcome to the first ever episode of Fantasy Basketball This Week, presented by District of Buckets. I am Tyler Castle, the co-host of this show, along with my good friend, Karl Baltimore, a.k.a. District of Buckets. So why don't we get right into it? And Karl, why don't you tell us why you should trade Chris Middleton today?
Oh, now we're going to start with that. I'm on this one. I'm pro Chris Middleton. Love his game. Love what he means to the Bucks. You're looking at him, like we're definitely going to disagree on this just because I think that he has such a high role every single night. He was an all-star last year. He still has a lot to prove. That I believe you still want him on your lineup. I don't know. What do you think?
I honestly think Chris Middleton had one of the best games of his career a couple of days ago. I believe it was Christmas, actually. And he's going to return back to the median, which is he'll be consistent, but there will be a few games where he will not produce for you because his three-point shot won't be falling. So if there was a guy that you wanted to sell high right now, I think Chris Middleton is the guy. Who do you have on your radar whose stock is too high and you think you could flip for a good return?
I'd say stock too high right now. Week 1, I'd say Terry Rozier, Charlotte Hornets. At that guard spot, the Hornets rotation, like you still have Devontae Graham, who gets a lot of looks. The real question mark there is, like, what are the Hornets trying to do with LaMelo Ball? And so trying to figure out how he's working with their lineup. He only played like 16 minutes his first game, and you don't really know how he's going to get thrown in. You don't know how much you're going to use him. But eventually they want him because you don't invest that much draft capital in the guy that you want to just leave on the bench. And so at some point, along with, I feel like Rozier's ability definitely is a lot lower than the numbers that we've seen. So that's going to go down. And then also there's the added aspect of looking at someone who could be encroaching on his minutes. And that's why I think you should sell him high right now.
All right, Karl Baltimore's got Terry Rozier with his stock too high. I'm going to throw out kind of a crazy one here, and I know a lot of people aren't going to enjoy this take. James Harden, sell him high. James Harden is having a lot of drama with Houston right now. Karl, will you agree?
There's a lot of drama, but I wouldn't say so high. We'll get.
Okay. Let me get after it here. James Harden, sell high because you don't know what he's going to end up doing this year. The reason being because there is so much drama in Houston right now, and he wants out. He's made it very clear that he wants out of Houston. We've seen what NBA players do in the past when they want out of franchise. They tend to, I wouldn't say tend to because that makes it seem like a majority, but some players resort to forcing a trade by sitting on the bench, refusing to play. And I wouldn't put that past James Harden. I really like James Harden as a basketball player, but I'm not sure what his output for fantasy is going to be this year just because of all that drama. Who knows where he's going to end up, and who knows if he's going to sit. Would you agree? Do you think there is a possibility that he could sit and force a trade?
I think it's an outside chance that he sits because he's still going to have to suit up and play the game until that point. I still think he could probably – feels like he's going to try to find a way to make sure that his trade request, goes through. But on my side of it is the talent level is too high. If he's suited up and he's playing basketball, like he's in your lineup, you want him every single game you can get him. And I think that the outside chance, I think it's an outside chance of him sitting. I think it's even lower chance that he sits out a bunch of games and he gets traded this year. I think it's more likely that he ends up having to stay in the situation at least towards the All-Star break, trade deadline. We'll be hearing something about it. But right now, if I have a fantasy team, I'm not too worried about James Harden right now. I'm keeping him in my lineup. He's going to ball out.
Okay, moving on to our next guy. How do you feel about Darius Garland? He had in his first 2 games, he averaged about 37 minutes a game, about 21 and a half points through the first 2, 5.5 rebounds, 8 assists, 1.5 steals, half a block and 2 turnovers a game. He also shot 3 for 3 from the 3-point line on the day after Christmas. Do you think Darius Garland can keep up what he's been outputting so far?
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that he can. He's got the talent. He showed flashes of it last year. We've seen the player that he was in college. He has more than enough ability, if he's given the opportunity and keeps these minutes up, to be someone that will continue to put up good numbers. Also, shout out to his backcourt mate, Colin Sexton, for having this season.
Absolutely. And Darius Garland actually kind of leaks into one of our other topics, which would be waiver wire pickups. In ESPN leagues, Darius Garland is only owned by 50.7% of leagues. It's already up 30%. So if he is still on your waivers, go ahead and snatch Darius Garland up. He's going to be big time for the Cavs this year, and he's going to produce a lot of fantasy points. It might not be as high as it was. It looks like he is averaging, based on the ESPN standard rankings or stats, he's averaging 55 a game right now. He's actually playing as we speak, but I don't think he can keep up that 55 point per game average. He will be very good though, and he is a solid waiver wire pickup. A guy I would like to talk about is Christian Wood. Christian Wood is he's the starting center of the Houston Rockets. 6'10" guy, had an amazing debut for the Rockets. He had 44 minutes. And in that 44 minutes, he had 31 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block. He did have 3 turnovers, but he played exceptionally well, 14 for 22 from the field, and he hit 75% of his free throws. So I think Christian Wood is a guy that needs to be picked up in every single league. Right now it says he's owned by 90% of rosters in ESPN leagues. That needs to be 100% because Christian Wood is going to take a lot of shots along James Harden. Sure, his production will fall a little bit whenever Boogie and John Wall come back, but Christian Wood is going to be a S-tier center this year, in my opinion. Do you see him falling off? Because he's averaging right now 53 points a game. What do you see for his future, Karl?
I think if he does fall off, it's not by a lot. You know, he just his role is pretty set in stone. Even with the other guys coming back, he's still playing at an efficient level, which is what you want anyway out of your fantasy basketball players and any basketball player in general. So I'm all in on him so far this season.
Yep, and I am the proud owner of Christian Wood in our fantasy league, Karl. So he's actually giving you the work this week. So I'm glad to have him on the team. Go ahead.
I'll get you on waivers the rest of the season.
If anybody's interested, I am whooping Karl in fantasy basketball in our fantasy basketball league right now.
Going well.
That's all right. A lot of time left in the season.
A lot of left on the bench this week.
Football had you occupied, championship football.
Oh, yeah, got to win one league first, you know.
Okay, and then I have one more guy that I want to talk about in the stock too high category. Karl, we actually talked about this beforehand, and I know you disagree with me. Brandon Ingram, he looked phenomenal in the first game. Absolutely phenomenal. He's going to take the most shots for the New Orleans Pelicans. It's going to be close with Zion, but he looked all-star and all-NBA team in that first game. I don't think he could keep it up. I think he'll be better than he was last year. I think he'll take a giant leap from last year, but I don't think he is as high as the NBA or the ESPN rankings have him right now, which he's averaging 48 right now.
Let's see, on that point, he's a much better in real life basketball player than he is a fantasy basketball player. He's going to do a lot on the court with his scoring, actual basketball scoring, you know, all that matters, you know, putting the ball in the bucket. But he'll have games in fantasy basketball that may be a little less efficient than he wanted to, but within the realm of winning games for the Pelicans, it's exactly what they need, but it's not what you need if you're a fantasy basketball owner of Brandon Ingram, because you're going to see too many games where he might take too many shots that will, ruin his point total at the end of the game for you. But he's basically going to be that type of guy you want to just keep in your roster, see how the season develops. But I don't see him doing too much on the other end of the floor or even on the boards most nights to be worth it in fantasy basketball.
Yeah, I would agree. He did have a phenomenal performance this last week, and I'm happy for Brandon Ingram. I want him to succeed, but I think people out there listening to this could flip him for something better. Right now, I think they could. Considering he averages more than Kevin Durant right now.
Yeah, I mean, a couple games.
Yeah, a couple games. Nothing you want to throw your mortgage on, but it's just something to think about.
And also,
all right. Go ahead.
Rebounding, where you're gonna have games where, like, despite his size, like, you'll see him get grab 2 boards. I think the game ago, I want to say it was against, what was it? It was against the Miami Heat. The game against Miami Heat, he only grabbed 2 rebounds the whole game, and those games will pop up against a little bit more physical teams. I feel like for him, they're trying to keep guys that are his size out of the paint, and also you have Zion up there, so there's rebounding is going to be what kind of makes or breaks his consistency in fantasy basketball.
Yeah, Zion's definitely going to carry that team in rebounds, and Lonzo Ball is another excellent rebounding point guard. So that does take a little bit away from Brandon Ingram's rebound production. But overall, great performance by him. Look to flip him if you can. Moving on, we're going to be talking about guys that were drafted a little too high in the fantasy drafts for us. We're going to be talking about guys that underperformed this last week. Karl, who do you have on that?
This is kind of an interesting one. Despite the fact that he's posted 2 triple doubles already, is playing as we speak right now for the Washington Wizards. Russell Westbrook is someone who I would say at this point is drafted a little too high in fantasy drafts, at least ours. I don't know if it's for ADP, other leagues, yada yada. But someone that's he is missing a bulk of production that will take him to an almost untouchable tier for fantasy basketball, and it's that shooting. Because for the first 2 games, he's shooting 15-41 from the field, and you're leaving a lot of points out there for someone who's already going to put out consistent performances just off of that high floor. But that ceiling is limited by his just inability to hit a shot at all right now.
Yeah, I think Russell Westbrook is one of those guys, especially with the news coming out that he's going to be resting back-to-backs this year. He's one of those guys that I think he was probably drafted a little too high in most ESPN drafts. And if possible, if you can try and get somebody to buy into him for somebody for the likes of, I don't even know who I would trade for him. If you can get somebody to think about possibly Trae Young, possibly Ben Simmons, a guy that doesn't get injured a lot anymore, that'd be a guy that I would consider looking to get rid of and trying to get some better point guard out of.
Completely agree. You really just can't trust him with the amount that he's.
Yeah, and he has, like you said, he's put up 2 triple doubles already, but he's doing it on 15 of 41. And he's carrying such a heavy load, and you would think Bradley Beal's going to carry a lot of that load too. But it really is just those 2 guys taking the shots most of the time. And I don't know if he's going to be able to continue another season of that. Granted, he will be resting back-to-back, so he will have a lot more energy for the games he does plays. But you're going to be losing 15 games from him this year just from resting back-to-backs.
And at least potential upside, I will say, though, for a season is Rui Hachimura, really promising rookie last year for the Washington Wizards, who's been out for a couple weeks with an eye infection. He's back. And that's what I want to say. And when he comes back, that just adds a whole other dimension to the offense. Maybe frees up, some more driving lanes for Russ. He has someone else that can, actually score the ball more so instead of just like in set shooting like Bertans or the way the rookies have been used for the Wizards right now. So yeah,
Yes.
Keep an eye out for production when Hachimura returns.
Hachimura he's actually predicted to take a leap this year. He's only owned in 46.2% of ESPN fantasy leagues, and he is eligible for that IR spot right now with his the eye infection. So if he's available in your league, look to pick him up, and just even if you just keep him on that IR spot for a little bit, he could be a guy that's worth looking at. Another guy that is on that injured reserve spot before we get going any farther is Kemba Walker. He's owned in 80% of leagues. If you just want to keep him on that IR spot for when he comes back, that could be something to consider. Another guy, or I should say two guys that I feel have underperformed, and these guys are guys you should not worry about, in my opinion. LeBron James and Steph Curry. LeBron James is going to be a consistent 30-point fantasy guy, and then he will break out for games where he has 70 points, 80 points, because he'll have a 30-15-15 with 2 steals and 2 blocks. That LeBron's not a guy you need to worry about. He is underperforming a little bit right now. I don't predict that to continue. And Steph Curry is actually a guy I'm very high on this season. If he can stay healthy, he's going to have one of the most productive fantasy seasons that we've seen, honestly. And because he's going to be carrying a bulk of that load, because really the only 2 hoopers on that team right now are Steph Curry and James Wiseman. And James Wiseman is still putting that footwork together.
Yeah, I might agree with both of those. I'd say LeBron's end, watch out for him having to rest because, he's been playing deep into the season for the last, 11, 12 years at this point now.
Right, yes.
So, and his season's only judged on the postseason every year. So I would keep that in mind also that the Lakers are going to, look to maybe rest Bron in certain spots during the season. And then on the Warriors side, I think Steph Curry will get a giant boost when Draymond Green comes back.
Yep.
Draymond.
When do you predict Draymond to come back? Sorry, I cut you off.
Say Draymond. I'm trying to look it up actually right now. If it's supposed to be soon. It said 2 more games, I think, when I looked it up.
Okay.
He'll be back relatively soon. And he takes a lot of pressure off of what Steph Curry does on offense, especially with the way the roster is now, no Clay. So you'll see Draymond he'll what he's done best. Like, he handles the ball well. He'll bring up the ball, allow the Warriors to do whatever they can to get Steph Curry open off ball, let him run through screens. And that should bode well for his efficiency that you probably haven't seen so far this season, where you're looking at Steph Curry take a bunch of shots, a lot of bad shots. Once Draymond Green comes back, I think he takes a giant leap in fantasy basketball ranking.
Yeah, Steph Curry, he should benefit a lot from Draymond Green. Another part about Draymond Green that should be intriguing to you guys is he's also eligible for the injured reserve spot, and he's only owned in 85% of ESPN fantasy leagues. So if he's available in your league, consider picking Draymond up. He should be the leading rebounder for the Warriors unless something changes with Wiseman, which is a great roll into James Wiseman. How do we feel about him, Karl?
He's exactly was advertised for the most part. Just haven't really seen too many guys that big move that well. Shoots the ball really well. Has a pretty good touch on the ball for a center. His shot's a little wonky if you look at his form, look at his base for the most part of his jumper. With no problem. He hits it. He'll get open shots. He'll help defend the rim. He does all that. But, you look at him, he's only played a handful of games. It's kind of amazing, too, when you look at he went from high school, not having a season last year due to the NCAA, just, doing what they do best, which is making sure that players don't play sometimes. So he's going to end up developing this whole year and slowly growing. You'll see his game Bro, I'm all in on all the hype for him. I think that the only reason he didn't go number 1 overall is because he wouldn't be a good fit next to Cat in Minnesota. So, and he definitely has that type of number 1 talent. So, nothing but good things for him.
Yeah, James Wiseman. He looks super raw on the floor. He's still got some things to work on, but even then, he's putting up numbers. He's putting up absolute numbers. He's averaging 32 fantasy points per game. On 6 of 12, he's averaging 6 of 12 from the field. He is hitting about half of his free throws, a little more than half of his free throws. He's averaging 2 3-points made per game, which is a huge boost in ESPN fantasy leagues. And if you look at his rebounding numbers, he has 7 rebounds per game, 1 steal per game, 1.5 blocks per game. I mean, this is the worst he'll be all year, in my opinion, and he's already putting up 32 a game.
Yeah. On him right now if you need to send.
Yeah, he is a good rookie, and he's also only owned at 81.6% of fantasy leagues. I don't know what those fantasy leagues are doing. Pick up James Wiseman if he's available. All right, and now we're going to move into everybody's favorite segment of fantasy basketball this week, Fringe Guys. Fringe Guys is the section of the show where we talk about waiver wire pickups that you can get that are owned in less than 70% of leagues. So chances are they might be available in yours. To start it off, I'm going to go with Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier is owned in 67% of leagues. The reason I'm high on Evan Fournier this week is he played pretty well last week. He has 4 games coming up this week, which is he actually only has 3 games, but he'll be playing OKC, Philly, and OKC once again. And as we know, OKC, they're a shell of the team they used to be. They're still good, but I predict Evan Fournier to have a very good shooting week against those teams. And if you've watched any Magic basketball, it does not look good. So Evan Fournier should be taking a lot of shots. My next Fringe guy is going to be Goran Dragic. Why the hell is he only owned in 64% of leagues? Goran Dragic, in his first 2 games this season, has had 44 and 48 fantasy points respectively in just 26 and 27 minutes. He's super efficient. He scored 20 and 18, had decent rebounding games. He's assisted 7 times and 9 times. His last game, he had 4 steals against the New Orleans Pelicans. He had 1 steal against Orlando. And he typically keeps his turnover numbers down. He didn't have a great game in that aspect against New Orleans. He had 3 turnovers. But I have no idea how he is owned in about 90% of leagues. Goran Dragic, he is going to be a big factor in the Heat's success this coming year. Another guy that I'm looking forward to watch playing, who has another 4-game slate this coming week, Mason Plumlee. Mason Plumlee will be playing against Atlanta, who doesn't necessarily have a strong big man. Golden State, who James Wiseman is looking good, but Mason Plumlee, he's a big man and he's a veteran, so he might be able to get the best of James Wiseman. He'll be playing Boston twice in the coming days after that. And Boston, they have a rotating big schedule with Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, and Tristan Thompson. And those guys aren't necessarily threatening to me. So if you're looking to pick up a center for your league, Mason Plumlee could be the guy. He's only owned in 64.7% of leagues, and he's coming off of a 40 and a 31 fantasy point production game. And I don't expect his production to be incredibly healthy, but Mason Plumlee is a guy that is going to get you about 30 to 35 points every game this coming week. And like I said, 4 games this week that's setting your team up for success.
my fringe guys, I'd go with number one right now, Chris Boucher for the Toronto Raptors. Now, this is someone who, if he is available in your league, and he should be, go grab him right now as you're watching this video, because he is balling, and his role for the Raptors has only expanded as the season has gone on. As you look, last game on December 26th, 9 of 13 shooting, 3 threes, 22 points, 10 boards, a nice double-double in only 28 minutes. Also added 7 blocks. Something you really love to see is his defense and rebounding. That's really going to propel him in fantasy basketball. Again, like, that's a guy, like, watching this video right now. If he's available, check your league. Get him on your roster right now. You want him the rest of the season.
I see you actually you picked him up during this video, didn't you?
Yes, I did. When picked them up looking at this week, the Raptors slate of games. On the 29th, they had the 76ers. He's going to have a tough task dealing with Embiid a lot on the inside and a lot of the slashing, playmaking abilities of Ben Simmons, but he's capable. It's a big test for him. I think he'll still have a good game there. Then he gets the Knicks. That's a dumpster fire. I don't really need to say much else there. We'll have another test inside with the Pelicans, but this is a week that will prove him as a player against teams that are capable, and then you'll see just the way he performs against teams like the Knicks, and that's where his value will really be shown when he beats up on these types of teams. And then let's see. Then I also have a combination of two Kevins to look at. Actually, big Kevin guy this week. Kevin Huerter for the Atlanta Hawks, the guard/forward, depending on your league. Mostly due to the role more so than numbers so far, because it's still early. He's shooting well so far. He's shooting like 54% from the field and 54% from three. And as long as Trae Young is rolling, like, you want a piece of this offense if someone's putting up shots. Like, they're going to be good shots. They won't have too much to work for. Kevin Huerter's a sniper. He's been doing it since he was at Maryland. I would add him as a little flyer. And another person to actually keep an eye out is Kevin Love, Cleveland Cavs. Working his way out of a calf injury. Just kind of worried about, just how that's going to look the rest of the year. But I would still take a flyer on him because his role is as big as it's ever been. He's going to be one of the primary rebounders, primary scorers on that team for the entire season. And I think he's a good speculative add for this week.
Yeah, and just to jump in here for the long haul, Kevin Love he's produced every season, and this calf injury isn't going to stop him. It might slow him down a bit at the beginning, but Kevin Love is always going to be a guy that you want on your fantasy basketball team. Definitely one to watch. Those are my Fringe guys for the week. All right. And as a special for this first episode, we'll give you an extra Fringe guy. And my pick is going to be Duncan Robinson.
Duncan, let's go.
America does run on Duncan. Duncan Robinson proved last year that he could be one of the best three-point shooters in the league. Last year, he was making 3.7 three-pointers per game at a 45% three-point field goal percentage. Absolutely insane. His role on the Miami Heat is not going to decrease. As good as Bam Adebayo is, as good as Goran Dragic is, as good as Jimmy Butler is, those guys, their job is to create, and Duncan Robinson will be the beneficiary of those producers. If your ESPN league or whatever league you're in gives you bonus points for 3-point shooting or field goal percentage or anything like that, Duncan Robinson is the man. I just picked him up before last game. Yes, he's only produced 22 points and 35 fantasy points in his last 2 appearances, but the dude's role is only going to grow. He is, I don't even know how old is he. So you're going to want to pick up Duncan Robinson, 26 years old, and his role on the Miami Heat is going to continue to increase over the course of the year as Bam Adebayo falls into his place as a magician in the paint and just being one of the most dominant centers in the league. And and Goran Dragic continuing to be the scorer that he is, you guys are going to want to pick up Duncan Robinson. He plays, let's see. Duncan Robinson plays 1, 2, 3 games this week against Milwaukee and Dallas. These might not be his best. This might not be his best week, but you're going to want him for the long haul. That guy is going to put up 25, 35, and if he gets hot, he could put up a 45, 55-point game for you. Duncan Robinson is a guy that you should have on your team in fantasy basketball, and my opinion on that is not going to change.
Yeah, this is one thing we're going to 100% agree on. My other thing is that the only other person really fighting for his role is Tyler Hero this year. I mean, they basically do a lot of similar things. I mean, Hero puts the ball on the floor a little bit more and maybe better to an extent. But it's shown. We saw it all in the playoffs. We saw it all last season. They're not going to step on each other's toes. Like, I would add Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And Duncan Robinson, he has one of the quickest releases in all of basketball. I mean, it resembles Klay Thompson in that way, in which, like, when he's shooting off the catch and shoot, there's a better chance than not that it's going to go in.
It also does not need a lot of space to get that shot off. And
exactly.
That's all you really want in a shooter.
Right. All right. I think that's going to wrap up our show. It's going to wrap up the first episode of Fantasy Basketball this week. Normally, we would get into DraftKings and FanDuel lineups here, but we want to make sure that we are up to date on all of those rules and make sure we are giving you the best advice for those things. And we're going to make a lot of money together. After that is typically going to be our subscriber shout out section. So we want to hear from you guys, whether you guys think you have the funniest fantasy basketball team name, whether you had the best scoring week, like you outscored everybody on your team by double or in your league by double, or you had the least amount of points because your guys underperformed big time. I'm thinking RJ Barrett. That's who I'm thinking of. If you have RJ Barrett on your team, you probably lost this week.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins.
Yes. Andrew Wiggins. All right, so go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I guess kind of same thing as Tyler said. Keep an eye out for the blog, District of Buckets. We'll attach the link to the site here. We have even more fantasy content, also more other basketball content, just in general, just to get your, scratch your itch for the game if you're really trying to learn more about the game of basketball itself. I'd say quick shout out, player-wise. Honestly, let's go fantasy-wise for me. Shout out to me for leaving a bunch of points on the bench this week, not really checking my lineup. Tyler's probably going to give me the win. He's probably going to get the win anyway. Made it way too easy. Beat myself. Didn't give myself a chance this week. Hats off to him. Kicking myself for that. I'm so mad. I'll rebound though.
That's all right. Long season, just like regular NBA. It doesn't matter to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's got to get in.
Yeah. All right. So we want you guys to reach out to us if you have any questions about who you should start this week, or if you have any questions about your FanDuel lineup, your DraftKings lineup. Leave it in the comments down below, or we'll leave a plethora of social media tags for you guys to link up with us. And we want to hear from you just about anything and everything. And if you want to be featured on the subscriber shout out portion of our show, then just make sure you send us something funny or something good. Closing statements time. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this. We're going to be doing this every Sunday night, and it'll be releasing every Monday morning. So you have something to listen to on your way to work, or something to think about before those games start on Monday. We'll try and give you time to where you can pick up some of those Fringe Guys off the waiver wire before the games start. And if you want to be notified when that happens, make sure you click the bell. This was sponsored by District of Buckets. You guys can check out the blog in the description down below. We are looking for sponsors, and we're relatively cheap right now. You got to get us while we're cheap, because it's only going to go up from here. We really appreciate you guys watching. Carl, you got any last things to say?
Last things to say, appreciate you guys for tuning in. Also just want to have a little college basketball shout out real quick. Shout out to the Missouri Tigers basketball team. Having a good year this year. hoping for the best. Even though we're set up to be the type of team to lose to a mid-major early in the tournament, you know.
Yeah, who'd they almost lose to the other night?
Lost to Bradley and almost lost to Bradley and I mean they played a lot of close games. So I almost lost to Bradley. They lost Liberty earlier in the year. We barely beat Illinois, even though it was a good win. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be a fun year.
All right. Shout out ZOU. You won't hear me say that too often. Go Mo State women's basketball. That's where my allegiance lies.
Honestly, you can cut my last one out. Shout out Mo State women's basketball.
All right. Once again, thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it. We'll see you next Monday.
Yep.